All right, so I'm just gonna do a kind of quick and short video on what I did here, kind of what this style is for me. Um, yeah, so let's get started. I'm gonna hide all of the text for now, and we'll just focus on what's happening in the background. So here I have a image sequence. So this is just a bunch of photos I personally took, and I imported as an image sequence. Let me just zoom out. So what I did is I have a camera and I literally put it up against my friend's car window while he was driving, and I just made it do interval shooting. So every 2 seconds it would take a photo, and I'd make it long exposure so you get these really nice light streaks. I think you could definitely do this on your phone. It's not something I've tried, but look up interval shooting, which is where you shoot a photo every X amount of seconds, and then look up how to do a longer exposure on your camera, and that's how you get these kind of light streaks. So that's literally all this is. So then what did I do is I looped this 4 times. Boop, boop, boop. So we'll go back to our composition now. Yep. So I just looped this 4 times. That's all that's happening here. I just cropped it. Just make something exciting and fun happen. And when I make these like visual loops, I make them with the intention of VJing with them. So for those of you who don't know, VJing is like the art of the visual, like it's DJing, but for like the visuals behind the DJ. So it's the person who's controlling those, syncing them to the music, adjusting them, chopping them, putting effects on them. I'd say it's just as integral as a DJ performance for like a cohesive product. So I'm always working with those in mind. An important thing when you're working those is you want things to happen in a way that it's easy to synchronize them to the beat. So right here, I have it set up that this project is 60 frames per second. And what that means is that every 30 frames is a beat. I'm not gonna get too into it, but that means this is really easy to sync up. And if you try to speed these up, it'll still retain a high frame rate. If you slow them down, since it's 60 FPS, you'll still be above 30. It's great. Anyways, so what else did I do? I have an adjustment layer. And all this is just like a contrast bump, because I want, when you're working with visuals for live, the contrast is what's going to give the most effect. Because if your visual is very bright, and only bright, it'll just kind of be like a wall of like color, and you can edit that live to make it less bright. But what ends up happening is it's a bit too much, especially in some smaller venues. I think the best visuals are ones that are very contrasty, and what'll happen is on those video walls is you'll see the individual like video pixels. I just think it'll look cool, and that's why I always kind of add a little contrast bump to these, maybe lower the brightness sometimes. By the way, these photos I edited in Lightroom. If you want to see how I do that, I literally just have a preset. I'm not that good at editing, like color grading, all that. But then let's talk about text real quick. So what the funk is happening here? We've got text that says movement. Hold up, I gotta get all these. I think up to here. Yep. Right. So what am I doing? I literally, oh, that's not good. We got to change that. I have here a text layer, the very bottom, which is like, so to speak, the base layer. Like this one is never moving. You see the background movement, that thing stays the same. And then here I have these almost like wisps. I literally would just cut, move, and that's all I'd be doing. So I'm just moving these around. And they're just slightly, using a Gaussian blur and some opacity to make them kind of wispy, look like they're in the background here. So you can see the opacity is not 100%. And on the effects, I have a Gaussian blur if I take that off. If I take that off, you can see, for example, it's like it's very present. It's very there. It's very sharp. But with a Gaussian blur, it turns it into more of like a, ooh, what's happening kind of thing. So that's just kind of moving around. Boop, 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 boop. And I'm using that as like a transitional point in a way. Like it's like flaring up, right? I'll put this at like quarter quality, sorry. You see like it'll flare up. Oh, because I don't have everything enabled. Sorry. Like one thing I used to try to learn to edit like anime like AMVs, and one thing that did teach me is that every visual element has to have like a reason for coming there. There has to be some sort of swell in, like an indication something will change. And that's what I try to do here. So you can see here, as we get close to when I'm switching this text to motion, the text flares up one more time and switches to motion. So it's like a visual indicator. And it just kind of keeps doing that. And at the very top, I have these plugins. So I have Deep Glow. And as you can see, it adds a glow. And the most important thing is to use this threshold knob so that not everything is glowing. Here, I'll duplicate it so I can mess around. So this is what it looks like by default. I think it's a bit too much. So what I always do here is I go to input and then I up the threshold because I only want the most brightest parts to glow. Like dark objects shouldn't glow, like if you think realistically. And then I smooth it a bit so it's a little less jarring. And then I still found this a bit too much, so I dropped the exposure down. So it's just a smidge, but it still adds like quite a bit, as you can see. It adds that little haze. And then the other thing I do is noise, right? And that's just like, I find it like a binding layer, like almost like a glaze, if you want to think it in like baking terms, I guess, where it makes everything exist on the same page, in the same universe. Like right now, you know, this is actually looks quite cool, I can't lie. But it does feel like just text on a background. Like this is not that special. So I add a bit of noise and maybe I overcooked it a bit, but now it feels like, oh, this is like combined. This is now holistically in the same project. And yeah, that's about it. I can link some photo tutorials on how to like do this long exposure stuff if you don't have experience. And yeah, I hope this helps. Font is just always Helvetica. Don't ask. Don't ask. It's always Helvetica. That's all. I hope this helped a bit.